What if I told you there's a creature that doesn't age like we do? No wrinkles, no slowing down, just endless molting and growing. Meet the lobster, nature's closest thing to biologically immortal. But if they don't age, why and how do they die? And what does it have to do with human aging? First, let's clear something up. Biological immortality doesn't mean can't die. It means the creature doesn't age in the typical sense, no increase in mortality risk over time. Lobsters grow bigger and reproduce efficiently even in old age. Some have lived over 100 years. So what's the secret? Inside our cells, DNA strands are packed into chromosomes. At the ends of those chromosomes are telomeres, protective caps like the plastic tips on shoelaces. Every time a cell divides, those telomeres get shorter. Eventually, they become too short and the cell stops dividing or dies. That's called cellular senescence, and it's a big part of aging. Lobsters produce large amounts of an enzyme called telomerase, even into adulthood. This enzyme adds new sequences to the ends of telomeres, essentially rebuilding them. This means their cells don't suffer the usual wear and tear from division. They can keep growing, healing, and reproducing without signs of aging. But it's not a perfect system. As lobsters grow, they need to molt, shedding their exoskeleton, but the larger they get, the more energy molting requires. Eventually it becomes too physically demanding. In many cases, they die from complications during molting, not from aging itself. So technically, they're immortal at the cellular level, but not invincible. Could understanding telomerase help us fight aging in humans? Maybe. But unregulated telomerase is also linked to cancer, so it's complicated. For now, lobsters remain a fascinating glimpse into how nature plays by different rules. The immortal lobster? Maybe not forever, but definitely longer than most.
How about that Dr. Gita Jensen, huh? She has become a very valuable partner for us in performing clinical studies. She really wanted to be here today, but had a complication in travel plans, but maybe we'll have her here next year to talk about some additional research that we're doing on other patches with her. She's a fantastic researcher. We're blessed to be working with her. I also really love her accent. You know, she's from Denmark, and something about an American hearing that Danish accent, it just sounds so authoritative. I often wonder if I should adopt an accent to sound more authoritative, but so far what I'm going with seems to have worked, so I'll stay with it. All right, so what are the signs that a cell is aging? So this is where, again, we're going to look towards nature for clues. If we can examine the structure of cells and how they change over time, we can learn about how to stop or even reverse these changes. So let's look at some of them. One is, we know that as cells age, they become more and more dehydrated. Part of this is linked to collagen production. So if we think of collagen like a jello that holds water, and collagen production begins to decline at around age 25, then it makes sense that the cells can hold less water. So this is a very important concept. We want to be able to improve hydration if we're going to change the way that people age. As the cells age, they begin to shrink. And there is what's called a membrane potential. So the electrolytes of the cell hold a charge around the cell membrane. And as we age and the collagen matrix begins to decline, that electrical charge decreases. And one thing you won't normally see in textbooks is that the charge around the cell is intimately linked to the replication of our DNA. The DNA, and that's because this has more to do with biophysics than biochemistry. The DNA is a helical coil. It's an inductor in electrical terms. So as the membrane potential decreases, the amount of energy that the cell has to pass along to a future cell decreases. So this is an important part of how we can define aging, meaning that if we can restore proper hydration, increase the size of the cell, increase the electrical potential of the membrane, we can stop and reverse human aging. That's part of the process. This is also linked to mitochondrial function. So the amount of energy that we have for making new proteins, for repairing damage, is all linked back to the mitochondria. And we know that most people experience mitochondrial dysfunction around age 50 or so. So we want to adapt strategies to keep the mitochondria improving, lots of energy, and that's going to help dramatically with our quality of life. Already covered the importance of telomeres. So when we study lobsters, species of ants that don't age or age like human beings, one of the key things that you see over and over again is that their telomeres do not shrink. So we have to have a strategy to address that. Decrease in collagen production. We've already covered that one. Decrease in protein synthesis. So as people get to be 50, 60, 70, they get injured, their ability to heal drops off dramatically, and that's because the ability to make new proteins has declined, and that protein synthesis is again linked to mitochondrial function. So we want to be able to make new proteins so that we can heal. We have to address that. We have to control our detoxification pathways, and there are some simple ways of doing that. But if our body is allowed to accumulate what are called zombie cells, these are cells that don't function but haven't been removed from the body. They will induce oxidative and inflammatory stress on healthy cells and are key in the aging process. So we have to have a strategy for addressing that. Oxidative and inflammatory stress causes breaks in the DNA, damage to healthy tissue. We have to manage that. And then finally, change in genetic expression. So one of the key biological models in human aging is this idea that we begin to lose our library of information of who we are as we age over time. The good news is that what's been discovered is that the information of who we are when we're younger is still there, but that information has gone dormant. So we need to find ways to reactivate that information so the cells can indeed become younger. So let's tackle these one at a time. First, dehydration. What can we do about this? Well, surface tension plays a crucial role in hydration, meaning if you can consume water that through the change in structure or the precise mineral content and the surface tension of the water is lower, it will be able to drive into the cell. And fortunately, this is one of the many benefits of X2O. It is a highly coherent water structure. We're going to see a video of this in the next presentation. But because the water structure of X2O is so coherent, the surface tension drops, and now hydration increases within about 15 seconds of consuming it. The membrane potential. Membrane potential, as it decreases, has all of these negative effects on how our metabolism functions. And one of the things that we found in the very early days of LifeWave was that application of the energy patches not only improved mitochondrial function, but they also increased the volume of the cell. We did that study with Dr. Gaetan Chevalier, where we found the cells actually increased in size, increasing the membrane potential. And that happens within about 20 minutes of the application of the energy patches. So what can we do about mitochondrial function? Everything seems to be coming back to this. So we think of the mitochondria as the powerhouse of the cell. It's where our bodies are making energy. So if we can't make enough energy, nothing else happens. It's a little bit like if you only have $500 in your bank account, you're not going to have a good time at Disney, right? So we have to increase our reserve of cellular energy, and that's going to happen in the mitochondria. And a decline in mitochondrial function is always related to aging. So keep that in mind. If you only had a strategy for increasing mitochondrial function, you would be way ahead of the game. And fortunately, we have many products that address this problem and improve mitochondrial function. X39, Energy Enhancer, Cellergize, X2O, amongst others. Okay, decrease in telomere length. This would be a medical claim, so I'm only going to say that studies on carnosine have shown that they protect the telomeres from damaging. However, Cellergize, specific nutrients in Cellergize, cyanothox, and also beta-alanine will not only help contribute to maintaining the length of the telomeres, but beyond that. Collagen. So most people, especially since we're very close to Los Angeles, think of collagen as something that we're going to use to plump up the skin, and that's totally fine. But collagen is the principal protein in the body. About 60% of the protein is collagen, so it's that important to our overall health and function. So when we see that we're elevating collagen production and it has a beneficial outcome on our skin, since the skin is principally collagen protein, then that is also reflected on what's going on inside the body. So if you're simply taking collagen supplements, using one of our patches, even taking vitamin C will stimulate new production of collagen. This is going to show up not only in your skin, but inside the body as well. There's also, of course, many studies which show that X39 and copper peptide specifically will elevate collagen production. So you're getting that benefit. Decrease in protein synthesis. One of the best things that you can do as you age is to exercise and build strength and stamina, and that's muscle protein synthesis. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but it's very important as a key strategy in anti-aging that you're getting enough protein in your diet. Use as a marker, about 1 gram of protein per pound of your body weight. Could be 0.8 grams per pound of body weight. But the key is that when you're looking at your diet, you should be looking at your protein intake and your intake of healthy fats so you have the raw materials necessary to make these proteins and to heal. And of course, as we've discussed, X39 helps with collagen production and, as we found, overall strength and stamina. So it plays a role in formation of other proteins as well. We also found in our very first clinical study on X2O that it did in fact initiate protein synthesis. We saw the metabolism of amino acids go way up. So one of the things you can do in your experimentation with X2O is add a branched chain amino acid supplement or a protein supplement in X2O before working out, and you may find that your ability to synthesize additional muscle tissue goes up. Sorry, no, I'm going very quickly. We have a lot of ground to cover. Detoxification. So this won't cost anything. If you practice intermittent fasting or regular fasting, it will help to remove these zombie cells from the body. So that's something that you can do that won't cost anything. Also, elevating glutathione. So whether or not that's with the glutathione patch, that's with Celergize, that's with your diet, on a daily basis, get proper hydration and detox, because we're constantly accumulating toxins in our body. Increase in oxidative stress. Well, Scienthox that we included in Celergize, very, very powerful as a means of managing oxidative and inflammatory stress, along with the combination of our patches. And again, we've already covered this, so I'm going to keep moving along a little bit. Now, one thing that we're doing some very interesting research on is extra virgin olive oil. And we've been doing these experiments where we try to embed specific wavelengths of light, which we're not going to talk about today, into olive oil for producing new effects. And we think that there's going to be some very interesting outcomes to this work. But olive oil, especially extra virgin olive oil, make sure it's pure, is something you should be including in your daily diet because of all of the benefits. But one of the many benefits is that it's so rich in monounsaturated fats that it provides an anti-inflammatory effect, amongst others. Another benefit, interestingly, well, let's talk about gene expression and get to this because I'm running a little bit behind. X39. One of the key areas of age reversal is how do we reset genes to a more youthful state. So the idea is that if your genes were expressing at the age of a 25-year-old, even if you were 70 or 80 years old, if you had enough energy to drive the process, then eventually all the cells in your body would become 25 or 30-year-old cells. So that's what's exciting about that. The information is there. We just have to access it. And this happens through a process called methylation. But what would be some of the key ways today that we could restore genes to a healthy state? Well, we know one of them is X39. Physical exercise. Exercise will reset about 70 to 80 genes to a more youthful state. It's not very many when you consider, we might want to be able to reset 15,000 to 20,000, 18,000 genes to a more youthful state. But that's one of the benefits of resistance training and exercise. Olive oil. Actually, another benefit of olive oil, it's more powerful than resveratrol at resetting two of the sirtuin genes to a more youthful state. So it's known that there are 8 human sirtuin genes. 2 of those are reset to a more youthful state by olive oil, so yet another benefit by taking that daily. So the short version of this is that when we look at all of the signs and the symptoms of aging, there is very good information to show that there are things that we can do today to improve our health span and our longevity. The primary topic that we want to focus on is gene expression, since the others are resolvable, and how we can restore that information. The implications to this is that the problem of human aging is solvable. And it gives us the hope that not only can we extend how long we live, but we can live productive lives and more youthful lives in the process. Okay, now we're going to go to a short video, and we'll come back and talk about X2O.
This study was done by Ben Levine out of UT Southwest in Dallas. And it's a really, to me, it's seminal, groundbreaking study that isn't talked about enough. By the way, he's just a phenomenal cardiovascular exercise physiologist. I mean, he trained with the biggest giants out there. And what he did was him and his lab took 50-year-olds that were sedentary. So they're middle age, 50 years old, sedentary but otherwise healthy. So you didn't have any other diseases besides being sedentary, which I think is a disease. But they didn't have any other diseases like cardiovascular disease or type 2 diabetes or hypertension, right? So they were otherwise healthy, just not active. And he wanted to see if he could put these guys on a pretty long 2-year training protocol, how would that affect the aging of their heart? So as we age, our hearts typically shrink in size and they get stiffer. And that affects not only our cardiorespiratory fitness and our ability to exercise, and I mentioned our cardiorespiratory fitness goes down with age, but it affects our cardiovascular disease risk as well. And so the reason our hearts get stiffer, by the way, does come down to a lot of glucose. So the more glucose stimulation, more glucose is around in your vascular system, it, through a chemical reaction, forms advanced glycation end products. So this glycation essentially stiffens the collagen that surrounds your myocardium and your pericardium. And so you get like this stiffer heart that can't respond to stress well, So you want your heart to be very plastic and malleable and flexible, right? You don't want it to be stiff.
Doesn't sound good.
Just like you don't want your blood vessels to be stiff. What he wanted to do was see if he could change the structure and the trajectory of these aging hearts. And so he put him on a 2-year training program, which involved the Norwegian 4x4, by the way. And when you start someone out that's, not physically active and you want them to do the Norwegian 4x4, when you have them doing their interval, their 4-minute interval, and this speaks to you as well, or anyone, you don't have to necessarily go as hard as you can the whole 4 minutes. You just have to be working hard, that interval.
Yeah, you do have to last 4 minutes, right? So
you have to last 4 minutes. And so some people even start off, they're just briskly walking because that's hard for them, right?
Yeah, totally.
So it's all tailored to the individual. And so some people get really intimidated where they're like, there's no way I could ever do that. Well, actually, these people did do it. And they started out doing Norwegian 4x4, but they also did a variety of other exercises, including moderate intensity and some more vigorous intensity exercise, as well as some resistance training. And the control group was just this like yoga, flexible training sort of stuff that people were doing. By the end of the 2 years, these people were working out about 5 hours a week. And at some point, they were doing 2 Norwegian 4x4s a week, and then they went down to just doing 1 a week. But, over the course of 2 years, they were getting a lot of exercise, about 5 hours a week. Mm-hmm. And essentially, at the end of those 2 years, the structure of their heart, so the stiffness of it and the shrinking of it, was reversed. So their hearts grew and they became more flexible. And it was reversed in such a way that it was 20 years less aging. So their hearts looked more like 30-year-olds than 50-year-olds, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, that is amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think it's also like, well, you think 50, it's too late to start exercising. Well, it's not too late. Mm-hmm. You can be in your 90s and get benefits. I think that's another really important sort of take home with that story is that, you can reverse your aging of your heart by 20 years if you really put in the effort. Five hours a week is about what I do. About 5 or 6 hours a week. It's a lot of work. Mm. I didn't always do that, but I've decided as I started to get into my mid-40s, I'm going to spend less time podcasting and more time exercising because this is my health.
Okay.